Hello and welcome to The World Today on Channels Television. I am Amarachi Ubani. The World Economic Forum is finally over in Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory, and the African leaders on the continent called for a need to accelerate the growth potential through education and improved healthcare delivery. That was today's discussions. Nigeria's Minister of Finance, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, highlighted the importance of fast-tracking the Millennium Development Goals for the continent. Also, Prime Minister of Cote d'Ivoire, Daniel Duncan, reiterated the need to improve education system for Africa.
And final day of the World Economic Forum on Africa was a basket of ideas. These range from the importance of achieving the Millennium Development Goals to having sustainable and renewable energy. The United Nations has stated that education and improved healthcare delivery must be paramount on the agenda of African leaders if they must attain the MDGs.
So, to kickstart this viewpoint, Nigeria's Minister of Finance, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, was unequivocal on the growth that can only be driven by these two factors.
For me, I think education is crucial. I want to agree with His Excellency, the President of Senegal, on that, and with you on your observation, because really, if you educate girls and women, then you take care of a whole lot of problems. One area I'd like to highlight and be more critical where we are failing is on maternal mortality. Why do I say that? I say that because that's where we really do have answers to that. We know what to do. We have the technology to make sure that women do not die in childbirth. And yet, we have very high maternal mortality numbers.
Education combined with health is really important to do that. But I will say that in the sector in which we are less competitive, we have some problem, is the question of unemployment and poverty. We have to work harder on it.
Yeah. In addition to that, African leaders are advised to provide the right environment for growth to thrive.
The main thing that needs to happen is obviously good governance, institutions functioning, peace, rule of law, access to, respect and dignity of the individual, as I call it. These are the fundamentals. Yeah. And there are enormous opportunities, but they're fundamentals for business as much as for governments, because they're fundamentals of society. And then the second thing I would ask is, as we develop this growth, because this continent is growing very fast, be sure it's done in a sustainable way. We have the opportunity to design the growth here in the future and not make the mistakes that have been made in many parts of the world.
Turning to sustainable energy on the continent, the Minister of Petroleum Resources, Mrs. Desiani Alison Madueke, sets the ball rolling on how Nigeria and indeed Africa can achieve this feat.
We have become Africa's largest producer in terms of oil and gas. Unfortunately, how that is parlayed into actual, real engagement of the polity all the way down the spectrum is a different issue altogether. I think for too long, Africa's middle class has had a squeeze. So you actually begin to have the wealthy and, of course, the poor, to put it in the best way possible. I think the work ahead of us now is to ensure that the output of these resources is adequately and efficiently, not to mention expediently, deployed all the way across the spectrum.
One of the key problems I think we have on the continent is subsidies. The subsidies that go into petroleum resources is, to be honest with you, in my own opinion, is ridiculous. And I'll say this, you take a country like Nigeria, we spend $10 billion subsidizing petrol. Right. Now, it's the cost of building a railway system across the country every single year. It's the cost of building 2 refineries every single year.
The World Economic Forum on Africa may be over. However, what may continue on a more robust scale is the implementation of ideas, findings from this year's meeting, and a better lifestyle for the people on the continent. Bolaji Akiwali for Channels Television News.
And staying with the WEFA discussions, the first plenary session was anchored by Channels Television, the host broadcaster. The focus was on the youth and what they're doing to develop the continent. Some of the African youth who participated in the forum believe that the growth of Africa in the last 20 years should be associated with the youth. while others say the economic challenges are not giving them the opportunity to dream big, and they should be empowered to take charge of the continent.
When the holding room, I told them that I'm going to ask them the very first question. Do they believe, the panelists here believe, that Africa's youth have taken their own destiny into their own hands and are shaping their future? Kola, I'm going to start with you.
Africa's youth has done something radical. The last 20 years has shown the growth in Africa. You could correlate that to this generation of Africans. The reason is, compared to our father's generation, we have decided we want a different Africa to live in, to grow up in, and also to build a better life for ourselves. If you look at the history of what a lot of countries in Africa have come, where they've come from independence, a lot of these countries were handed over to people who were trained and educated by the colonial masters. So they were taught in a certain type of way to run a polity. 60% of the continent of Africa today, from the numbers, are under the age of 30. So if you see the radicalization of what is going to happen and is happening, is transforming the continent, is the focus of the youth from areas of e-commerce, telecommunications. It's a different ballgame. And the main difference is this: we want a better continent.
You see the bright spots, you see those of us that are really stepping up and wanting to shape the future. But I think that because of the particular challenges that we have, we need to dream really big. We need to carve out really bold solutions. And it's hard to dream big from nothing, right? The way that you get to the point where you're able to dream really big is that you start with small dreams. So maybe your first small dream is you want to go to a particular high school, and then you're able to go. So you realize, actually, there are no limits. And so whatever world you want to see, you can create. And I think that possibly because of some of our economic challenges, not enough of us are dreaming even the small dreams, so that we can, be emboldened by our successes with the small dreams to get to the point where we are really looking around us and saying, I want to conquer poverty.
We're living in a continent that has a very huge youth population. However, I think another dimension to it is, as much as we are shaping the Africa that we're living in, we're not doing enough. It's good that, here we are, we're young people and we're playing a huge role in shaping the communities that we're living in. But how many are there of us that are actually doing that? How many are there of us that are privileged enough to be sitting at this stage? So I think, if anything, those of us who are privileged enough to have platforms like this need to be advocating for the other 199 million, and challenging the older generation to allow for us to have that circle bigger. We have the numbers. And if anything, we shouldn't have to, for example, resort to violent means to having our causes heard. And so it becomes vital that as young leaders, we recognize the responsibility to have, not just to ourselves, but the Africa that we want to define and the Africa that we want to live in.
There's another narrative to this. I mean, we have to be enabled. We have to be empowered, and we have to be inspired. I think it's not a one-way street. It's not a matter of us just taking it. It has to be offered. Do we snatch it? No. If we're going to get criticized for snatching it, we're going to get criticized for not taking it. But there has to be a halfway house here. So I think our governments, our people, in general, there needs to be more done in this area where our voices do need to be heard. And I absolutely agree that the circle does need to be brought in. But at the same time, we need to be heard. We need to be, we have to have a seat at the table. But at the same time, it needs to be a halfway thing where we're willing to take it, we're willing to do as much as we can, but they have to be willing to give it as well.
The African Union say that in the 50 years to come, I hope I will be still alive, but anyway, some of us will be gone and others will take the ball. But we need to make sure that this generation is part of this process. We say that in 50 years, we think that Africa is rising. In 50 years, Africa will be prosperous, with peace with itself. That have been the message. But also they added, with the the development were centered on the people themselves. Who are the people? The youth of today. You are the one who have to drive the development of this continent.
Discussions from much earlier today from the World Economic Forum Africa. Our Channels Television was the host broadcast. We've been covering discussions from start to finish. But away now from WEFA, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says a specialist team is set to start work in Nigeria to help find the more than 200 schoolgirls who were abducted by Boko Haram militants. He said the U.S. team, working with the Nigerian government, would do everything possible to free the girls. The schoolgirls were seized, as we remember, from the boarding school on the night of April 14th in the town of Chibok in northeast Borno State.
The images from Nigeria this week have captured the public's attention about extremism in faraway places. And it has also helped to focus the world's attention on Boko Haram, a concern that we have been focused on for some period of time. Our interagency team is hitting the ground in Nigeria now, and they are going to be working in concert with President Goodluck Jonathan's government to do everything that we possibly can to return these girls to their families and their communities. We are also going to do everything possible to counter the menace of Boko Haram. The entire world should not only be condemning this outrage, but should be doing everything possible to help Nigeria in the days ahead.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, and as he said, the whole world should be interested in helping to bring back these girls. So far, UK experts have also arrived in Nigeria to help with the search for the missing Chibok schoolgirls. Now, according to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, a team will advise and support the Nigerian authorities in its response to the abduction of the girls. In the team are officials from the government, including the DFID, the FCO, and the MOD. They will be considering longer-term counter-terrorism solutions to prevent more attacks by Boko Haram. A team, of course, joins their counterparts from the United States who arrived yesterday. The 7 joint team of about 60. They'll be joining a team of about 60 U.S. interagency members who've been on the ground since before the kidnappings as part of counter-terrorism efforts in Nigeria. Their task will, among other things, include establishing a coordination cell to provide intelligence, investigations and hostage negotiation expertise. The French government has also promised to dispatch a specialized team to help find the girls. Around 10 experts from the external DGSE intelligence service with satellite observation knowledge are joining the US and the British teams. France already has more than 4,000 troops operating between Mali and West Africa and Central African Republic east of the continent.